How are we?
Oh, we're good. We're fine. How are you?
Very good, very good. Same old for the most part.
Ah, that's good.
Yeah, no news is good news.
Oh, definitely. These days, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. The world continues on its crazy path.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Um, so, as you know, I'm currently in Eilat, which is the city on the south part of Israel.
Yep,
It's on the Red Sea, and my daughter is taking a diving course there, so she's learning to dive.
this is
Uh,
cool. I spoke to you earlier about this, and I forgot to mention I've only this is very embarrassing. I've only ever done like diving with a tank in a swimming pool.
it's really strange considering your part of the world is one of the best diving kind of nations for everyone.
Yeah, it's strange and embarrassing, but I do hope to do it in the open ocean or in the sea.
Yeah, so here it's like it's not exactly like an open ocean, it's a sea, and it's completely different from the Mediterranean. Like the Red Sea, it has a constant temperature throughout the year, and it also has a very kind of rich underwater world with coral reefs and all kinds of fish. So it's much more popular for divers in Israel. So most of the clubs and courses are here on the Red Sea part. And it's right between like Jordan, like one side, and Egypt on the other side, and like all of this kind of area is full with very interesting diving destinations. So like in Jordan, there is Aqaba, and in Egypt on the other side, there is Taba, which both are very popular resorts for divers. And in the middle, there is Eilat. So Eilat is kind of small town on the southern part of Israel. Yeah, so we're here. And also, so it happens today is Jewish New Year. Go figure, like.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
A happy new year to
Something
you.
like that. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are a lot of kind of like for those who are not familiar, kind of strange, I would say, things about how our Jewish thing is constructed. Like for example, the day, if you didn't know, the day starts in the evening in Jewish tradition.
Ah,
Yeah, so like
okay.
all of the holidays, they start in the evening and then they end in the evening of the next day. Yeah, so like
Ah, okay. Yeah.
and right now, like most of the families who observe tradition are kind of gathering to this. And by the way, the evening officially starts when you can see three stars in the in the sky. I'm sorry. Like if you can like spot three stars, it means that the evening has started.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah,
This
something
is
like
this
that.
is a interesting way to gauge nighttime.
Yeah, yeah. So the customary kind of dish is apples and honey. So you take some part of the apple and you just soak it in some honey and you eat it, and it is supposed to symbolize the sweetness that the next year will hopefully bring us and all that. Yeah. So that's how it works.
Nice. What is the name in Hebrew of the holiday?
Oh, it's called Rosh Hashanah, which stands
Wow,
for like the head of the year. Shana is year and Rosh is head. So Rosh Hashanah is the head of the year, and that's what it is right now.
nice. Like one thing that keeps coming back to me as I'm working with you guys and working with Beam is that Hebrew is a very like difficult language for me to pronounce. Like
Oh yeah,
the sounds are so different.
yeah. It's a very interesting language. It comes from a combination of an ancient Aramean language, which was like forgotten long time ago, and also the combination of kind of new linguistic constructions that were actually some of them were taken from Russian because the person who
Oh,
designed the kind of more modern Hebrew, he was actually from Russia. So it's like a very weird combination of an ancient language and the kind of new syntactic and linguistic constructions. And one of the most kind of strange things about Hebrew, except for the fact that it's written in the reverse direction, so it's like not from left to right, but rather from right to left.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, but it also does not have vowels. Like when you write, you don't write explicit vowels. So it's like a lot of words, especially words that are like names or words that were taken from other languages. Like it's very difficult to understand how to pronounce them
Yeah.
because you don't have yeah. So it's like only part of the letters are actually written. But yeah, it's very very weird, and it's also a different alphabet, so you cannot immediately read it. Like when you land in any country in Europe, at least you can read the name.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't
You
pronounce it
could,
correctly.
yeah. You can recognize it and read it. Yeah.
Yeah, here it's like
And
you
some
just
sort of,
see some strange signs and you have no idea what to make of them.
yeah. This like I am still a learner of Chinese probably until I'm very old. Uh, Not a very well versed learner, but the most difficult thing with Chinese is the same thing that like the characters they do have like pinyin, which is the like Roman alphabet, I guess. I don't know if it's the Roman alphabet or what it's called, but the like classic for me anyway as an English speaker letters with some tones over the top. But when it comes to like the Chinese writing, it's almost impossible for me to recognize anything beyond one, two, three, and barbecue, and that's about it.
Yeah, there is also a lot of emphasis on pronunciation, like
Yeah,
where you put the kind of the emphasis on which part of the word it can make like completely different things.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so now that we have covered some geography, history, and yeah, religion, let's talk about crypto. And today we're going to talk about Beam a lot. Going to talk about various different types of Beam addresses and transaction types that we support. And we're also going to talk about some important kind of future plans, what's going to happen in the next couple of months in terms of the DAO voting and in terms of the application releases and all that. Um, and in between, we'll probably talk about some recent events that happened. Not too many, but there were a few interesting kind of things that occurred.
Yeah,
Yeah, so let's get started with that.
let's dive in.
So first of all, last week, if you remember, we had a asset swap party, and it was very very nice. So we have been able to test the feature and give away some prizes in the process. Um, I really liked it.
It
So
was wicked. It was really fun. And also shout out to Rascal who's in the chat uh, for following through with the crowns one as well. I think the combination of stars, crowns, we got a lot of people testing the assets and also testing the Nephrite that came out. That
exactly. So speaking about the fleet, so we are going to have a vote coming up in the DAO because the idea of kind of integrating Nifrit in BMX DAO ecosystem is that there will be some amount of BMX allocated and then distributed as a yield for whoever is staking their Nifrit coins and PH into the stability pool. So the idea, like a few words of how it works. Nifrit is a collateralized stablecoin, and as such, you have basically kind of your positions based on the CDP principle, collateralized debt position. So you have to put in some ratio of collateral, and by default, the minimal amount of this ratio is like 110%. And then what happens is that when your position is liquidated, there are two kind of modes of liquidation. So there is a normal mode, in which somebody can just liquidate your position and he gets the reward for liquidating your position. And the interesting aspect is that you don't need to have even beam, you just can kind of hit the position and liquidate it, and you will profit from that. So it's a very profitable activity to keep this system healthy, which is exactly the point of it, right?
Yeah.
And if you are like kind of staking your Nifrit, which is the stable tokens, into the stability pool, then this pool will be used for liquidating weak positions, and you will gain yield in the process. So you will help, like your Nifrit will be used to make the system healthier by liquidating weak positions, and then uh, the kind of your reward for doing that, in addition to the profit, is also going to be the yield. And this yield is going to be developed. Obviously, in order to make this happen, the DAO needs to agree to this process, which is why we're going to create this kind of procedure, just like we have announced with the proposal being published in the forum, and then we will create a voting proposal from that. And we hope that this will happen in the kind of next couple of weeks, so that in addition to testing this application on the DAppNet, and it's already there, if you haven't tested it already, please do so, download the DAppNet wallet and launch the application, take a look around. It's pretty complicated, but it's also very nicely implemented, in my opinion. And once we have this proposal ready and once we have voted on it, then we will be able to kind of allocate the amount of BMX needed to launch this application on mainnet. So this is the process we will go through in the next couple of weeks.
And so this, like, at least from how I see it, this will be the next kind of activity or whatever that people will be able to kind of earn yield and beam after the initial like bootstrapping staking campaign where it was risk-free staking of Beam for BeamX. This will be the next way that people can add to the like ecosystem in general, like assuming that the DAO votes the proposal through and this kind of stuff. This will be the next kind of way that people can earn a yield with using their beam like a few more steps than the initial and some more like risk parameters that you need to take into account and this kind of stuff. But this will be the next way all things go for people to earn yield with their beam. Is this right?
Yes, absolutely. So this is one of the things that are going to happen. Like, as you know, we have created this DAO voting application some time ago, and we have not used it so far. And this is actually going to be the kind of first important proposal that will be raised, and we will use our on-chain voting mechanism. And we will talk a little bit about DAOs in general and our on-chain voting in a moment. But the second thing, or the second part of that, is also going to be the implementation of a regular voting proposal. Because right now we only have special proposals,
Okay, yeah.
which kind of, yeah. So what's the difference? The difference is that the special proposals are things that happen like occasionally or every once in a while, and the process goes through the forum. There is a proposal being raised, it's being debated in the forum, and then once we decide that it's like we should vote on that, then this proposal is being promoted, and it's being promoted to on-chain voting, and that's when the DAO members participate on-chain. Regular proposals are created in order to distribute the rewards that are being accumulated in the DAO vault. So right now, the only rewards that we have in the DAO vault are the proceeds from the band's sales.
Okay, yeah.
And right now we have accumulated, I think, I don't remember exact numbers, but something about like 50 or 60,000 Beam in the vault. And obviously this money belongs to DAO. And in order to distribute it, we need to create this process where every voting period, there is a decision what to do with these funds. And these funds can be either distributed to the voters in this specific period, or they can be allocated for the reserves for the DAO. So we have this kind of process that we still need to deploy. Right now, this money is just sitting there. Nobody can touch it. And also, the next kind of major step for us in terms of moving Beam from like governance to DAO governance is going to be preparation of bounties for specific tasks. So far we have been from one side pretty transparent, but also it was kind of more centralized, I would say, in how we implement things. And we would like to take care of that as well. So instead of doing feature-based or release-based process where we announce, for example, asset swaps are going to be released in the 7.2 version of the desktop wallet, and then we just work on. So instead, we're going to frame all of these development tasks as proposals as well. And this will do two things. This will, first of all, it will increase opinion clarity in terms of the roadmap, like what's being exactly done. So today you can know what's going on just by visiting GitHub or kind of asking in the forums or listening to our spaces. In this specific kind of situation where all of these things are done through on-chain voting, it's much more clear to see like what is the next features that are going to be released, what are our plans, and how we are preparing for those, right?
Yeah.
So this is kind of the next step. So just to sum this up, as you said, three things. First of all, the allocation of BMX. So we have yet another way to earn from BMX. And also, we're going to have regular proposals for the DAO, which are going to distribute the rewards that are accumulated. And also, we're going to have bounties for each specific development task.
Wicked. And this brings me to a question about like this structure. At least like, excuse me, from what I understand, this will, and correct me if I'm wrong, this will bring in like the possibility for developers that are like outside of the core developers to take on tasks or pick things up that they're interested in contributing to being bounty for. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have been always saying that we welcome developer. Since it's like kind of a difficult process of getting started, and I will talk in a minute about how we're trying here. But yes, totally, all of these tasks are going to appear like in a more, I would say, bounty-friendly way.
Cool.
And yeah, I believe that the kind of core tasks or like more difficult tasks will still preferably, like I think, go to original Beam developers who already have the knowledge. But yeah, we will definitely open this up more, and we will encourage wider participation in these things. Yeah.
Okay. This is cool. And like I think that at least I've always held this opinion and kind of always shared it in the spaces and in the chat and this kind of stuff. I think that with the like applications that are coming out with Nephrite, I always question myself, is it Nephrite or Nephite? Anyway, like forgive me if I mispronounce it. With these kind of applications, with DEX, with asset swaps very, very soon to come onto mainnet, and a DEX following soon after. With all of these applications, it creates a lot more like opportunities for developers to create applications on Beam, and also like this is maybe different to the bounty stuff, but this creates possibilities for like more applications on Beam where the developers can also create their own kind of funding for that application, can create like revenue generating situations for themselves and for the community and this kind of thing. And I personally expect that with these kind of applications, like what I would consider kind of the base DeFi applications coming to fruition, that there will be huge opportunities for devs to be building on Beam and capture a lot of like the market share early on in what I believe is like going to be the most thriving kind of privacy DeFi hub anywhere.
I sure hope that whatever you just said will really be the case. And yeah, so first of all, as you know, we're working on integration of the Ethereum virtual machine. And once we have that, it will definitely open up kind of the community of developers, because today developing for Beam is quite complicated. It's a lot of new things to learn, so that Learning curve is pretty steep. However, with the integration of EVM, most of the Solidity developers will be able to create applications on Beam, which is great. And then we will really see kind of, I think, like more people coming to participate because, you know, every day, and I'm really like, I really mean that. It's not a figure of speech. Every day we see examples of how privacy becomes more and more essential. And speaking about DAOs, like I said that I'm going to talk about it in a minute. There was this recent situation in which people who voted in some DAO decisions could be held accountable, like in court. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, this was I forget the BZX or something like that, and they rebranded to Uki Finance or something like this. Is this the one?
I think it is.
Yeah,
So
BZX or something like that.
yeah, it was kind of. I think I'm not sure it was actually a decision, but I think there is an intention maybe to kind of. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, it was not yet kind of accepted. It's not happening yet, but there is a real possibility that whoever
Mm.
voted in the governance kind of process of this DAO and their docs and the governments know who they are, they can be held accountable for the vote because apparently this DAO is being accused of what was it like a meeting unlicensed securities or something?
Yeah, I think it was more to do with like permitting trade of unregistered securities and this kind of stuff.
One of the big goals that uh, we were kind of absolutely, strongly sure about when we created the BMX DAO is that the voting should be confidential, and having this ability to have confidential votes in the DAO, it kind of becomes, I think, important out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, and it's not the first time we're seeing that this kind of need for privacy is like not only very, very relevant for anyone that's participating in the space. And voting is the most recent example and something that we've been working on very thoroughly. And like maybe this is a good question, Alex. Do you see Beam like going forward being a place where, say, for example, DAOs on Ethereum can use Beam to be able to vote privately to avoid like any of this weirdness that happens by the whoever it was, the world police in America, kind of overseeing this kind of stuff. Do you think
Yeah.
that Beam will fit into that slot?
So technologically, yes, absolutely. And I think maybe we're not doing enough, like in terms of marketing, to push this idea. But you don't even need to use anything, something like breaches can be scary and potentially insecure. All you need to do is to be able to construct a proof of ownership for voting tokens, for the governance tokens. And then you can deliver this proof to Beam chain and you can establish a kind of Beam account that holds this proof. And then we can provide infrastructure to, support almost any kind of governance process with complete confidentiality. And I think it's a great use case for Beam.
Yeah, absolutely, and couldn't agree more. We do have a good question in the Telegram chat that I want to bring up because I feel like it's quite relevant now to the discussions, and it's from Unseen Shadow King, always a difficult one. And if I understand it right, the question is, what measures will the Beam team take in order to keep the opened up ecosystem safe? And from my understanding, I believe they mean like how do we protect people acting in the Beam ecosystem from, for example, scams, from like hacks, from kind of uh, dissident developers from wherever that are trying to capture some of the value that's floating around in the Beam ecosystem. How do we keep people safe within an open ecosystem?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I also see that Unseen Shadow King is typing, so maybe he has like more details about that question. Oh yeah. So what we are like kind of doing um, is not the, let's say not very different from what most projects should be doing, and is first of all telling people to be very careful.
Yeah.
And when I say be careful, like sometimes you can't really be careful, and sometimes it's just kind of happens. Like for example, this recent hack that was because there was some kind of wrong or like incorrect generation of vanity addresses. You heard
Yeah.
about?
This was with the Wintermute guys that had a address with many leading to save
Hmm.
money. Yeah.
Yeah. So first of all, you always have to download kind of the products, whatever it is, like especially if you're using binaries that were compiled by someone else from official website. Always check all of the like hashes that they match and make sure that everything that should be signed is signed. Like this is kind of the least you can do in order to make sure. And also be careful in terms of like when you're using smart contracts, even on Beam, but also anywhere else. Just don't just put all of your money in immediately. Do some research, check the steps. By the way, we have been talking last week. I've been in the Source space, and
Mm.
Source, as you know, is this project incubated by Beam, which is building decentralized kind of Git ecosystem. And one of the things that we were discussing is the idea of having a developer reputation. I think they're coming for you guys.
Yeah. Hold on. Hold on. I'll be back in a few days. Sorry about that.
Get your Tommy gun and start shooting. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah. So the idea of having a developer reputation as a process for verifying the quality of the smart contracts, right? So this is very important to understand, like who implemented what and how it got where it did. I just recently read an article. I probably mentioned that about like 50,000 NFT contracts have an admin function that can just use any funds that are locked in the contracts however they want. And this is important. Like you are using these contracts, but you need to make sure that there are no mechanisms built in that would make this rug pull just basically very very easy. And it's true also for Beam, right? Even though we are still a very small ecosystem, most of the things that we're doing is done by us. This is not going to be the case like for much longer. So there will be kind of outside contracts out there. So yeah, everything should be taken very carefully. We are trying to create this process where people who are developing applications and ideas come to us to consult with us, both in terms of the support, and we do provide a lot of support on to build things. And by the way, if you are building something for Beam, I do encourage you to come to us, not just with specific questions, but also kind of tell us about what you're building, and we will try to help. And sometimes this help can be very substantial. It can come in terms of kind of smart contract samples. It can come in terms of like specific API extensions. We're very friendly. We really encourage this kind of thing. So please, like, come to us and talk to us about your ideas, and we will try to help you the much we can. So I hope this answers at least some of that. Um,
I have like a follow up to that I think that like it's very difficult to keep everyone safe in an open system. Like there's always going to be stuff going on that is weird, and the most important like thing is to look out for yourself and be cautious and careful, and also like look out for other people in the ecosystem, because like as you see with like Bitcoin from the early days, Ethereum even more so now, and this kind of thing, there's always like the shady kind of actors that are trying to get a piece of something that's not really theirs. Uh, but it's very difficult to stop these kind of things without like kind of backtracking on it being an open system. It's either open to everyone or it's not. And you, at least in my opinion, you cannot really protect against like these kind of things whilst maintaining an open system.
Yeah, so when it is an open system, it's kind of, I think part of being project's community and people who are involved in this project is also kind of protecting, looking out for all kinds of scams. And by the way, I would like to say that our community really does that beautifully. Like I'm looking at the kind of support and answering questions in our chats and in our community channels. Guiding people towards the right way to do things. I think it's great. I really, really like that, and like I'm very thankful. But our community in general is amazing and like very supportive. Yeah, so like coming back to this kind of topic about privacy, as I said, like every day I see something mentioned. Like a couple of days ago, there was from Tim Belko in response to Fubar who said like for Ethereum, I think we have like we need privacy, private ETH transfers by default, and I'm like of course you do. Like that's obvious for us. In Beam, as you know, yeah, we have been always confidential by default, and one of the things that I don't think like everyone knows is how many different types of transactions and addresses we support. So a lot of people followed Beam news around 2019 in the beginning, and one of the big things back then was this fact that Mimblewimble protocol is interactive, and it requires both wallets to participate in the creation of the transaction, and you need to both sign like the sender side and the receiver side in order to create a transaction and send it to the blockchain. And indeed, that was the case. And this was one of the major differences between Mimblewimble and any other protocol out there. And it created a lot of difficulties for us, both from the technical point of view, because we needed to create this efficient way for the wallets to communicate. And that's why we created SBBS, which is the kind of secure protocol for wallets to send messages to one another, encrypted, of course. But the second point was the usability. We could not easily integrate into existing wallets because most of them supported this Bitcoin or Ethereum-like schema where you just sign a transaction and send it to the blockchain. And in my opinion, it really impacted the adoption of Beam in the early days because we could not be a part of this major, Trust Wallet or other wallets that were becoming popular, MetaMask, of course. However, we have improved a lot of that, and we have added quite a few new types of transaction. Most of them came after the integration of the Lilantus protocol. Lilantus protocol was integrated in order to improve this issue with kind of tracking of the transaction graph using like very specific kind of active attacks. And Lilantus basically is a shielded pool. So you can put your UTXO into the pool and then after some time take it out as a completely fresh UTXO while still being able to prove that it's the same value that you take out as the one that you put in. And in addition to fixing this problem, it also allowed us to create offline transactions. So offline transactions in Beam still behave just a little bit different from the ones in Bitcoin. So you can create an address that allows you to send funds anytime into the shielded pool without the receiver being online at this moment. However, there are actually two types of shielded transactions. The first is based on this kind of voucher system. Like it's not important, it's an implementation detail, but it means that if you get an address, you only have about 20 kind of different sends in it, and then you need a new address still. Now, obviously, we have made it very transparent. So if you are coming online during this period, your wallet will automatically update for new vouchers. So you don't need to think about that. Yeah. But if let's say, yeah.
And this question came up a little bit in the chat as to, I think someone shared a screenshot saying that they were running out of vouchers for transactions and that they needed the other wallet to come online. And this is about like if you start with say 10 or as you mentioned 20, and then as it depletes, once it gets near to running out for the offline transactions, it will send a message to say, hey, look, the other wallet needs to come online to kind of refill those uh,
Yes.
vouchers in order to continue to send the offline transactions. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely.
Cool.
So the amount of vouchers that you receive inside an address is a direct kind of function, or it influences the length of that address. And I think most of people notice that when you're copying a receiver address, sending it to someone, it's quite long, right?
Yeah.
And the reason it is long is because it actually encodes inside two things. It encodes your online address. So if you are online, you can receive online transactions. And it also encodes inside some amount of vouchers. Now, why are these vouchers needed? The only reason they're needed is because in terms of the implementation of the Lelantos protocol, this is the most secure way to send your funds into the shielded pool, so that even the sender of those funds does not know when these funds are being spent.
Yeah.
So basically, when a sender, like you're a sender, you're sending someone, UTXOs or funds through this address, from that point onwards, first of all, you waste one voucher for that send. And the second, that's it. You lose track completely of these funds. You don't know when your receiver is even using those, right? And it's the most secure way to implement this transfer. Now,
Exactly.
the downside is if you use all of your 10 or 20, however you're getting vouchers, and the receiver never comes online, you can no longer send using this method.
Mm.
So what can be done about that? So in addition to having these kind of regular like voucher-based offline transactions, we also have an additional mechanism, which is called public address. And this address has this property that it never expires. You can always send offline transactions to that address. However, it can theoretically be possible for the sender to see when these funds are spent, not to where, not like what's the transaction or whatever, but you can see that these funds were touched.
Okay. Yeah.
And this is why, yeah, sorry.
So if like to put it in kind of a situational aspect, if say I use my public offline address to receive my mining rewards from a pool, uh, people would be able to see when I moved those funds after I'd received them from the pool. Is that correct?
Yes, I just want to emphasize that it's not like it's kind of easy to see. It needs to, you need to do like very specific things in order to be able
Okay.
to detect it, but it is theoretically detected.
Mm.
Just the
But
fact that you spent it, just the fact that
yeah,
you took it out of the sugar pool,
so
nothing else.
you can't see where it's going to,
No.
who it's going to. It's only the fact that it has moved and left that kind of
Yes.
initial wallet.
Yeah. Like consider the fact that it's a dead drop,
Yeah.
and you can just see when this dead drop disappears, right? Somebody took it.
Okay, cool. And
Okay.
and a follow up to this would be, is it almost similar to like a contract where with the contract you can see if someone withdraws from the contract?
No, so the difference with the
Okay.
contract, yeah, the difference with the contract is that anyone can see the amount,
Yeah.
while in the public offline, no one but the sender and the receiver can know the amount, right? The sender knows it because
Okay,
he
cool.
sent it, and the receiver knows it because it now belongs to him.
Mm.
In the contract, everyone can see the amount. Yeah, so it's different. It's much more
Cool.
secure than contracts in terms of
Okay.
privacy. Not secure, much more private than contracts. And I think the most kind of straightforward use case for these addresses are donations. So let's say
Yeah.
you're running an organization that receives donations, and obviously you don't want to expose the identity of your donor. Okay, so it's no secret who you are because you are the organization. You're publishing your offline, public offline address on your website. It never expires. At any time, anyone can send you donation. No one will know who that was. But yes, when you are using these funds, whoever sent it to you can theoretically kind of be able to see that, which is okay because you are an organization, you're collecting donations.
Yeah.
Now, in order to avoid confusion, and once again, one of the issues or one of the specific kind of properties of Beam is that we are very careful with everything that's privacy related. So we have hidden this in settings. So you will need to go to settings and you need to find your public offline address, generate it, and put it on your website. And we have done that because we wanted to avoid kind of innocent mistakes where people just use this address to be convenient, but then they have less privacy. So we kind of erred, on the side of privacy in this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now this is kind of the transactions which are about the transfer of value between two wallets, right? So you generate an address. By default, each address has both the online and offline component. The sender can choose whether they want to send you online or offline because the sender probably knows or anticipates whether you're online or offline.
Yeah.
And you also have this public offline option if you want a permanent address that never expires with this kind of slight caveat about the privacy of like being able to see if the money was touched, but it's okay if you're an organization. So that's kind of the scope of the value transfers.
Okay.
Now, in terms of the smart contracts, so in the smart contract, you send a transaction to the contract, not to the other wallet. And when you do that, there can be two things that are happening. Either you are kind of adding value or storing value in the contract. For example, you can send into the vault, and now your transaction kind of becomes from your wallet, your UTXO is spent, and the value is added to the on-chain kind of contract vault. And in this case, people can see the value of whatever is stored there, right? So, for example, when we have implemented bonds, which is Beam ENS kind of system where you can buy a name and attach it to the vault. So the way it works is that anyone can use your name to send you funds, but no one can see, so they can see that the funds disappear, but they cannot see where they went.
Yeah. So it's like what I mentioned before about they'll be able to see the change of balance in the contract.
Yeah.
But they won't be able to see where it goes, who it goes to, just that it's gone.
Exactly.
Cool.
Exactly. So that's the point, because you still want to preserve as much privacy as you can.
Yeah.
But in the constraints of Beam smart contracts, you cannot really encrypt all of these values. So like most of this information can be seen on chain because encrypting it is kind of a whole different story altogether, like how we implement these smart contracts. But you don't know who sent you funds and you don't know like where it went after that, right? So that's kind of the best you can get in this scenario.
Yeah. Unless someone, wow, you can prove kind of that you've sent it as well, right? If you use the payment proof, then like if you share the payment proof to prove that you were the sender.
Yes, so the payment proof allows you to show that you have created a specific transaction. And this proof is generic, so you can show it to anyone. You can show it to the recipient of the transaction or to any third party. And it can be validated in terms of compatibility, like that it matches with the information that you see on chain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's.
We have. Yeah. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say we have like a follow-up question, or sorry, one more question from Unseen Shadow King. which I think is quite relevant here in regards to dApps and smart contracts. Um, and the question is, what information can the dApps or the smart contracts receive is interacting with them?
It's a good question. Let me think about that. What information can the smart contract have? Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. It's a great question. And the smart contract in Beam has actually two parts. The first part is called the application shader, and it's exact equivalent of the smart contract as we know it from the Ethereum ecosystem, right? So it's basically a piece of code running on chain, stored on chain, right? The second part of the smart contract in Beam is actually located inside the wallet, and it's called application shader. And the reason it exists is to simplify access for your applications to the smart contract. And there is a kind of non-trivial correlation. So it's like, for example, let's say you have created a contract. Let's call it, I don't know, application one on chain. And now you want to create a UI, regular web page that you can interact with that contract. So what you need is to create this application shader that knows your contract and knows how to send parameters to it, that create transactions, because in Beam, creating transactions is non-trivial. You need to kind of construct a lot of things, them, encrypt them, and so on.
Yeah.
Now, you have your regular web page, which interacts with your application shader. But this application shader can actually call more than one contract. It can actually combine several smart contracts together, which allows us to create these interesting hybrid applications. For example, let's say tomorrow somebody creates an application that uses bands to do email encrypted. So you deploy additional contract on chain, and then you create this application shader that works with two smart contracts, with the bands one and with the new email one, right? And it kind of combines both of these functionalities together. So it's a very interesting and complicated design. And the reason we did it like that is to encourage this kind of mixing and matching, combining application functionalities together. It's very nice. Now, when you interact with the contract itself cannot know too much about you, because what it knows is only the information that is being sent to it, right? And you control what you send. So you send your kind of address or you send your signature. Using your signature, the contract can determine if you have some specific role, like an admin role, if such thing exists, or kind of another role. However, when we're talking about the application shader, it runs inside your wallet. And inside your wallet, it has, how would I put it? Not have access, but it could theoretically gain access to some additional properties. Like, for example, if you need to sign something, right? And the application shader requests the wallet to sign the transaction, you are presented with this dialogue, and I think all of you have seen it. When you're buying something in bands or an NFT, you have this dialogue to confirm the transaction. So it's very important to understand that this dialogue is not a part of the application. It's part of the wallet. Just like with MetaMask, only the wallet can have access to these secrets that are needed in order to sign this information.
Okay, yeah.
So if you ever install a third-party application from Beam, and as you know, it's possible, you can distribute it using our decentralized app store, or you can get it as a file and load it. You need to be very careful when you click the confirmation dialog to make sure you actually look at these numbers and you verify that the numbers that appear about the coins that you're about to spend or receive actually match your expectations. Because if you just click it like that, without looking, you're actually giving a third-party potential application shader an ability to spend the coins that you don't necessarily, expect it to spend. So it's similar to what you do in MetaMask, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
except for the fact that most Ethereum applications just require blind access to all of your coin,
Yeah.
amounts.
And a follow-up question to this, which I think is in line with Unseen Shadow King's question. Because the app shaders are run locally in the wallet,
Hmm.
or the spending of coins is similar to Ethereum, can the app shaders themselves kind of store information, for example, on your IP address, on your geolocation and this kind of stuff, as would be similar if, say, I run a Ethereum application front end on a server.
Okay, so first of all, in terms of Beam wallet mechanisms that access the internet, like access the some external IP, we always show a warning on that.
Yeah.
When you are opening, so I will answer this question in two parts. The first part is going to be in honor of Jonathan Davis. I don't know if he's still with us or listening to us, but for those who don't know, Jonathan is a very old and respected BIM community member who has criticized us on many occasions for a lot of things, and we're very thankful for that because he raised the very important points that we kind of needed and still need to address. One of these points is that when you are entering today build app store screen, so there is a list, and this list is still loaded from the centralized server. So we're kind of expected to change that in the future and to change the order of how the applications are loaded, so you can always prefer loading applications locally without ever exposing yourself to an outside IP. First part that we need to improve, right? So there is this issue that we need to resolve, and the second part is what happens when you are opening the page. So obviously this page can theoretically request access to outside resources. I need to check. I think it's blocked with the same warning, but I'm not sure 100%. So let me check that tomorrow with my dev guys, and I will get back to you. But in general, any access from the Beam wallet outside to an unknown IP, like outside of the Beam network, obviously, which is encrypted and you only communicate between the wallet and the node, should be blocked with the warning. Listen, be careful, you're accessing an outside IP. That's the
Yeah.
behavior. And I will need to check whether we have that implemented for like all URLs. Yeah, so that's kind of the mechanism that should prevent you from exposing your data. Now, if your data is stored locally, it is possible because you can use the local storage of the browser. But once again, if you cannot transmit it outside, theoretically, you could transmit it on. You know what? Let me check that. Let me get back to you on that.
No problem.
Yeah, but it's a great question. It's a great question, not trivial. I will explore
Absolutely.
that. Yeah.
And I think that this is from the people that I speak to on Ethereum. This is almost like as big a concern with regards to privacy as the transactions being obviously transparent on the blockchain. I've had people that I've talked to that have said that they requested the data that Infura or MetaMask or whatever had on them, and the amount of data that they had on them was like a huge amount of data, and I'm guessing they didn't talk too much about it, but I'm guessing it was a lot to do with this kind of metadata outside of the transactions themselves.
Yeah. So in terms of extensions and centralized components, yeah. So basically, it's very similar to the tracking mechanisms used by Facebook and Google.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have been always trying to steer away from that, so we don't collect any data on the usage of the wallets. Obviously, we don't collect any data about, like if we're talking about the wallets, like which applications you're loading or using, like we don't collect any of that. But there is a difference between actively collecting some data about you and accidentally leaking some data. And yeah, like we definitely need to take care of both points.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely.
Um, Whoa, I just noticed we're like almost at the hour mark.
Yeah, I mean, whenever we talk about being, there is always like so many finer details to go through, so much on the horizon, applications and this kind of stuff to talk about, so that the time passes very fast.
I want to mention something funny. A couple of days ago, me and Geico Ram, we took part in a podcast about privacy, and we talked about Beam. And it was very strange because so the idea was to talk about privacy in general and kind of do a high level overview. But obviously, anyone who kind of introduces you and he asks you to talk about your project. So he started with kind of Nimble Wimble because he kind of more followed this project from the beginning. And we started to talk about Nimble Wimble. And then from there, we talked about atomic swaps. And then suddenly, this guy, he realized that we've been talking about B for like 20 minutes. And he wanted to talk about privacy. So we switched topic to privacy. And it was a strange feeling like, listen, we just got the atomic swaps, but after that, we did contracts and we did, applications and we did so many things. And I have come to realize that it's like almost impossible to talk about just a list of topics that we've been working on for the last 4 years, like and cover it in 1 hour. It's impossible. There are just so many things that were happening during this time. Yeah, so it's kind of crazy how many nuances there are in Beam that we can talk about and dive deeper and deeper and never reach the bottom. Gus, yeah, are you still there?
Sorry, I just lost you there for a second. There was some some commotion outside.
Ah, wrong address again?
No, yeah, I'll explain. I'll explain in direct message
Okay,
after. Yeah.
I hope you're fine.
No, no, it sounded worse than it was, but I think it's okay. We're all good.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so yeah, so let's wrap it up. Thank you for everyone being here. We are going to release tomorrow the topic of our next space. I have a few ideas. I didn't share them with you guys yet, but we will talk about it tomorrow.
Wicked.
And yeah, and in the upcoming weeks, as you know, we are going to set up the voting process for allocating the BMAX for the different application. So Amir will also update you on how this vote is going to go, and we will set it up, open the thread on the forum, and start discussing that. Yeah, and a lot of more updates are expected. We have started working on the decks, so I think early designs and implementations will be coming soon. The bridges are almost ready. I hope to start testing them next week as well. Wow, it's happening. Yeah, so please stay safe, everyone. And
Absolutely.
yeah, if you're celebrating Hebrew New Year, please do so. And if not, celebrate something else, whatever you can celebrate. And we'll see you next week.
Absolutely. We'll see you next week. Thank you so much, Alex.
Thank you. Bye bye.
See you guys. Thank you.
Bye.